Let the beat control your body. Let the beat control your body.
Hey, welcome to the Irish Sunday newspaper review main part. And we're going to go through the main stories of the main stories through the newspaper. By my time, it is 5 to 8, which is roughly how long it took me to get through about 11 newspapers. 8 hours. This is not really very efficient. Okay, story number 1. All the papers, all going mad about it. What is it? What is it? Who is it? Why? It's Justin bloody Bieber. And Justin Bieber, pop kid dude, generally described as a brat for all the newspapers. He was involved in some kind of cop bust-up when he was drunk, driving his Lamborghini, drag racing with his friend who was driving a red Ferrari. Apparently he was only driving at 27 miles an hour, but he was pulled over by the cops, and now everyone's like, oh my god, what a fuck up, what a screw up, yeah, what a brat, etc., etc., etc. Lawyers of Justin Bieber, and this is the Mirror, by the way. Lawyers of Justin Bieber, were last night said to be probing claims that police exaggerated allegations that troubles pop star race a sports car at twice the speed limit during a drink driving bender. Miami Beach Police Chief Raymond Martinez said Bieber initially refused to cooperate with officers and was a little belligerent, using some choice words. I can well imagine. The arrest report said the singer had slow, deliberate movements and had a look of stupor when an officer told him to step out of the Lamborghini. Do they do that? Do they actually release people's arrest records like that to the press? I think that's kind of disgusting. I mean, don't the British do a thing where that, they might confirm a man in his 20s was arrested or something like that, but they won't actually say, oh, this is what he said, and this is what he said. Obviously, I suppose there's a lot of money for a police officer to actually leak that kind of thing, so that's obviously where that comes from. I still think it's quite despicable. In fact, I think the whole thing is pretty despicable. I think it's despicable that I have to, have an opinion about him. I don't really have to have an opinion on it. Who don't care. And this is the People, the Irish Sunday People, and this is all about his aid. It's a ridiculous front page headline. I watched pal give drug to Justin. Someone needs to save him or he'll die like Jacko. QED. She says, I have decided to speak out now that I care for him, and have probably been paid a shitload of money by this newspaper. 10 days ago, police swooped on the Canadian born star's home to investigate an egg-throwing incident at his next-door neighbour. Yeah, he threw eggs at his next-door neighbour. God, it's just... I don't know. It's just such a... It's stupid. I genuinely don't care about this thing. I don't think you can have an opinion about this thing. It's such a kind of manufactured load of crap. The actual media experience of him is just as manufactured as the image of him that's put forward to the younger audience who are his fans and that, the young girls and that, they get a certain image of him pushed forward and they get a certain reaction, and then you have the adult grown-up media and there's another image of him put forward as well, the kind of bratty yada, certain ideas are enforced about him. Of course he's a bloody brat. He's probably the most spoiled man on the face of the planet, possibly in human history. You're talking kind of Tutankhamun levels of spoiled, really. Sunday Express is nothing in the Sunday Express. Okay, we're moving on to the Sun. Again, same story. Justin Bieber, blah, blah, blah. Bieber's $6,000 pot of gold. He took 12 of these. 12 bums, wow. 80 ounces of weed a week. I don't know how much that is, really. He took Xanax, Ambien, Clenbuterol, Jolly Ranchers and sweets and blah, blah, blah. He's a very naughty boy and he took a lot of bad things. Yeah, let's move on to the Observer. Of course the Observer. They're all bloody well covering it in one way or another. The Observer takes the angle of an actual kind of psychological angle. It's not really as fun as the tabloids, but it's not really a fun story. It's just... Anyway, this is all about the dysfunctional father-son relationship. Father is like 38. Apparently he was there when Justin Bieber was arrested. Oh my god. According to reports, Bieber's father, Jeremy, 38 partied with his son in the hours leading up to his arrest, even helping to block off streets so his intoxicated son could drag race the rented car. The chaos that characterizes Bieber's lifestyle has all the hallmarks of a crisis set to deepen, says, some guy who's not a goddamn psychiatrist, who's never interviewed him or anything like that. But yeah, it's got all the hallmarks of a crisis set to deepen. One's Manhattan I'm a psychologist. Psychoanalysis, Jameson Webster. But is that fair? Is it fair for a psychoanalysis to make that kind of... I wouldn't trust a word of sometimes I give a word into... It's such a meaningless, nasty, pointless, empty load of guff. Anyway, there's nothing to it. Oh yeah, Lindsay Lohan, blah blah. Lindsay Lohan's well-publicized problems with drugs and alcohol accelerated after her parents each sought to enjoy her life in the spotlight as if it was their own, she said. Is that what happened? Well, again, don't care. Hollywood Reporter, he declared... Oh, he was interviewed in the Hollywood Reporter recently, and he declared, "I know who I am, and what I'm doing with my life, and what I've accomplished, and continue to accomplish as a performer, as a writer, as an artist, as a person, as a human being. I'm happy with the man I've become." The man who throws eggs at his neighbour's house. To Bieber, thinking the media pack is in hot pursuit of every tidbit is an adversary. "I don't give a fuck," Bieber continued. "Not I don't give a fuck just to be reckless and do whatever, but I don't give a fuck what they say." I don't know. I don't know. You can't judge someone through this ridiculous bloody prism. It's like trying to, it's like trying to guess whether someone is pretty or not when you're looking through one of those kind of refracted window panes you often see around the door. It's a totally distorted picture. Anyway, troubled. This is now, we're moving on to the Star. Yeah, all the papers. Pop brat Justin Bieber flew home to face the music yesterday after a tearful phone call in which he begged, please don't let them send me to jail, Mom." The teenage singer promised long-suffering Patty Millett he will enter rehab and do whatever it takes to get clean and sober. Two anxious members of his family said he knows deep down... God, I can't. I'm just going to fucking quickly get to the next one. I said F word a few times there. Well, he said the F word in the interview. And there, look, there's a picture of Justin Bieber there wearing angel wings. Anything of interest? Here we go. Like Lindsay Lohan and Spears before him, Bieber has become a staple topic on TV panel shows, with experts lining up to blame his troubles on his parents, his manager, his girlfriend, or his posse, which one included a friend known as his swagger coach, for failing to steer him straight. "I hate to point fingers at the parents in situations like this," said Dr. Drew Pinsky, a TV pundit last week. "This may be just the beginning of a drug addiction in a young adult." Like, the professional TV pundits kind of commenting on these bloody teenagers. Anyway, quickly, a little quote from the board regarding stars, and I kind of thought it was kind of relevant, because these things, when you're talking about these figures that are just images, kind of collective. Anyway, a specialist of apparent life, stars serve as superficial objects that people can identify with in order to compensate for the fragmented, productively specializations they actively live. So yeah, essentially we look and watch and absorb the stars to compensate for our empty, unwhole, incomplete lives. And that is exactly what the human race is doing. I think one interesting thing about Bieber is the actual scale of it, which I think is genuinely something unprecedented. And I suppose that would be an interesting thing to kind of look at and use that and, look at the network dynamics and kind of how something like that came about. But really, who cares? Right, next one. Moving on to the second main big story. Now, this is one that actually features very much in the papers on Sunday, but to my mind, it's the biggest one last week. I think one of the biggest ones about Ireland, to my mind, since the bailout. This is the Garda whistleblowers and the amazing attitude of Garda Commissioner and walking Stanford University experiment Martin Callahan towards the Public Accounts Committee. So when he spoke to them on Friday. So firstly, I'm going to go to the Irish Times, not a Sunday newspaper, but still on a Sunday. And here we have the debate over, so Garda Commissioner Callahan, he testified in front of the Public Accounts Committee. And Public Accounts Committee is a committee that is chaired by a member of the opposition, and it's specifically there with the remit to investigate expenses and losses of money to the Exchequer. So within that, they've been investigating the Garda whistleblowing and the penalty points thing because this has, in effect, cost money to the state and lost revenue from penalty point fines. A few million, in fact. And Commissioner Callahan's attitude is he's gone as far as saying he's been disgusted by the acts of the whistleblowers and that they should have done it through the Gardaí. And it's his attitude is well, anyway. There's a lot of debate amongst the TDs whether now that this guy has so badly denigrated the two whistleblowers that now the whistleblowers should have a right to defend their own good name and testify in front. And there's a lot of debate now over whether the whistleblowers should be let testify at all, whether it's within the remit of the Public Accounts Committee, whether it should be done in public and whether it should be done in private. And it should be done in public and it should happen, full stop. Because this issue is just too important. You cannot have a democracy, a proper functioning state, when the force that is responsible for law and order has zero accountability. That just cannot be tolerated, because that's not a democracy, you know? That's borderline totalitarian. But anyway, now it sounds over the top, but really, anyway, so credible witnesses. Minister for Communication Pat Rabbitt said Mr. Callahan was accountable to the committee for the spending loss or loss of money in the force because he was the accounting officer. If a committee is satisfied that they have a credible witness, then it seems to me they are perfectly entitled to question him so long as he doesn't reflect on the character of his colleagues who are not there to defend themselves, which is actually precisely what the commissioner had done. Well, one of his colleagues, the second whistleblower, he is now a retired Garda. But yeah, there's a lot of talk about this culture within the Gardaí where loyalty before truth. And that came out in the, I think it was a Morris Tribunal. We're going to get to that. Okay, going on to the Sunday Times. Slightly different angle, but again, dodginess in the Gardaí, okay? Gardaí lose bloodstained gate from Tuscan Duplanter case. So this is Sophie Duplanter, who was a murdered film producer in Cork. And this has been investigated. And one of the guys who was investigated, Ian Bailey, has been claiming that the Gardaí are setting him up. And a lot of the information from this case has gone missing. This is what the article is about, including a bloodstained gate. I did cover this in the headlines, but just kind of to go on to the main body or the end of the story. Items found at the crime scenes are always retained in case evidence and DNA testing enables officers at some future point to identify a killer, said a security source. Gardaí have already been accused of supplying cannabis to a drug dealer or drug user in return for providing information about Bailey. Witnesses also alleged to have been coached to provide damning statements. The scene of the crime was not properly preserved by Gardaí, resulting in a loss of vital evidence. Well, that's kind of the side point. Frank Buttimer, a solicitor instructed by Bailey, said the Gardaí have an obligation to collect and preserve evidence. How items of this nature have gone missing or been removed is beyond me, as anyone taking the evidence or documents in storage is supposed to sign for it. Now, what's his name? Michael Clifford from the Irish Examiner has been excellent in covering this, and it's a real pity there's no Sunday Irish Examiner that I could actually work from. But you know, this is the Irish Sunday newspapers review, so yeah, I have to review newspapers that are out on a Sunday. But he has been absolutely star, 10 out of 10 on this. Now, going back to the Public Accounts Committee, and again, the rivalry and the things that one of the guys who's kind of been, some say grandstanding, some say he's been very effective. Personally, I think with the nature of how these things are very often brushed under the carpet, that a certain degree of grandstanding is appropriate. But there are a lot of people giving out about Shane Ross and his kind of attitude. At least this is in the Sunday Independent. War of words erupt over Ross's demands to PAC. Last night, the merger committee will not hear the whistleblowers in public session next Thursday on foot of the ongoing row, but they will meet possibly to take place in private. Members of the PAC also expressed concern about being seen not supporting whistleblowers. Where is it? But yeah, essentially, I'm trying to find the exact quotation here. There is renewed anger within the committee ranks at Mr. Ross over an RT radio interview he gave on Friday morning in which he demanded the whistleblowers come before the committee. The committee also failed to reach a consensus on Wednesday on whether rehab bosses would be brought in. Writing in today's Sunday Independent, Mr. Ross blasts his colleagues for bottling it over rehab. It was widely expected that the PAC would decide to call in rehab last Wednesday. It didn't. It bottled it. Instead, it decided to seek reports, he said. Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with the dynamics and the protocol of the public account committee to really have any clue about it, but my instinct would be with things like this that are so embedded within Irish society that there's certain types of people who don't get penalty points in this country, who are genuinely untouchable. And it's this stuff really gets to the heart of it. And it's important that this gets sorted out, because we can't, anyway, what I want to do, best thing I can actually do with regards to this, because there's very little kind of meat in the Sunday papers about this that I can kind of plug onto. I'm just going to read verbatim Gene Kerrigan's entire column, because pretty much he nails it. Right, let's go. Garda groupthink, the force has form. When the police are checking allegations... Now, just firstly, what about the Gardaí? Now, you don't want to blanketly say all Gardaí are X or all Gardaí are right, because there's, a system and a dynamic with a system makes people behave a certain way. So I cited the Stanford University experiment earlier on with regards as a reference to Garda Commissioner Callahan. And the Stanford University experiment is essentially this famous prisoner experiment where you had a group of college student graduates and you split them up into prisoners and you split them up into guards. And with those roles assigned, people started behaving a certain way. So you can the guards started being abusive and all that kind of jazz, and that's why I made a crack. And using the power and filled the space that the power afforded them to, and even went beyond and kind of abused it. And the experiment ended up being shut down because they caught the guards at night kind of, messing around with the prisoners and doing things outside of the frame of the experiment. But it's very famous, very well known. But there will be good Gardaí in the thing, and mediocre Gardaí and whatever. But the problem is there's a system and there's a cult, and it's a cult that serves them first, the people at the top second, and everybody else a third, and last, scumbags. Because scumbags, that's the guard's attitude, by the way, not mine. But you know what I mean. If you're from a certain area, you have a certain access, you don't have certain powers, you're much more likely to get a bit of a kicking if you give them lip, that type of thing. And we know it's true. We just do. It's Ireland. Hello. So Garda groupthink. The force has formed. When the police are checking allegations about someone, they'll look at the person's record. Does the supposed suspect have previous? If so, it doesn't prove guilt, but it suggests a pattern of behaviour, a capacity to act in a certain way that may be relevant to the current case. So when we look at the row currently raging between politicians and the Garda Commissioner, there are things we need to bear in mind. And by the way, it's not just a disagreement on the way and means. This is an emotional confrontation. The angry Commissioner blatantly resents the impertinence of the Public Accounts Committee, those people who dare to assess an aspect of his stewardship. It's a conflict between a policing body and a civilian body, and it's complicated by the fact that there are many politicians who back the police, whatever their circumstances. As for previous, Judge Peter Smithwick spent 6 years heading a tribunal investigation into a double murder case on the Garda Síochána. He noted from the evidence he heard an ingrained culture of prioritising loyalty to the good name of the force over the legal, moral and ethical obligation owed to give truthful evidence to the tribunal. A judge does not lightly assert his belief that some Gardaí prioritise group loyalty above speaking the truth on oath. He does not lightly claim that such people place group loyalty above legality, morality, and ethics. Loyalty is prized above honesty, said Judge Smithwick, whose report was published just over a month ago. Reporting on the Donegal scandal in 2006, Judge Fred Morris said the tribunal has been staggered by the amount of indiscipline and insubordination it has found in the Garda force. That was putting it mildly. The police put an innocent man, Frank Short, in jail for 3 years. Judges aren't the only one concerned about group loyalty. Last May, the Garda Ombudsman Commission, which oversees the force, noted what appeared to be a systemic lack of cooperation from the police. Requests for even non-contentious information were met with unacceptable delay, as well as refusals, part disclosures or part access. At the end of 2012, 3/4 of Ombudsman investigations were outside a 12-week response period, and 21 were over 2 years old. The chair of the commission said, we are just not getting the cooperation we require. There are two things happening. One is almost farcical, the other deadly serious. The farce derives from the commissioner's disgust. The act of whistleblowers who went to the PAC, that's the Public Accounts Committee, with evidence of alleged malpractice in enforcing the penalty points law was disgusting, Martin Callaghan said. Disgusting, he repeated. He might have expressed disagreement, denoting a civilized divergence view. Instead, he chose disgust, an emotional term. He referred to the so-called whistleblowers as my subordinates, who were trying to usurp him. Again, personal language. Commissioner, they are your subordinates in one sense only. An organisation of 13,000 people is not a hippie commune. To be deployed, it must have a command structure. Within that structure, for the purpose of the organisation efficiently, one layer is under or subordinate another in the chain of command. In matters of consciousness, justice, and justice of accountability to the civilian authority, which is what this row is about, no Garda is subordinate to another. The concept of a whistleblower, someone within an organisation who discloses alleged wrongdoing, has been recognised since the 19th century as an essential part of democracy. Such people may be right or wrong, they are not traitors or casual informers. When internal structures fail, group loyalty undermines the organisation, unless the help of an external authority is sought. The deadly serious aspect of this row is about whether internal structures have failed. The whistleblowers tried the internal route, reporting a single superintendent and his actions in deleting 4 instances of penalty points. We're talking about 1 superintendent and 4 speeders, 5 people to be questioned. How long does it take? 5 hours? 5 days? 5 weeks? It took 8 months. Perhaps there is reasons. Perhaps this was an incredibly complicated matter. Last Thursday, Mary Lou MacDonald asked the Commissioner about the delay. He wouldn't explain. Such investigations are confidential, he said. She stressed that the committee didn't want names or details and merely wanted to understand the process. It's a confidential process, said Mr. Callaghan. This is nonsense. There are covert Garda operational details that need the protection of confidentiality. An inquiry procedure is not confidential. Virtually every day, Gardaí go into court and explain the investigative process behind their action. I discovered A, and this led me to do B, which in turn led me to conclude that I should arrest C. If the investigative process was, for some bizarre reason, rendered top secret, most of the criminal cases coming before the courts would collapse. Why did you arrest the accused? Ah, well, that'd be telling, my lord. The Commissioner isn't protecting some top-secret investigative process. He's being asked about internal structures some believe have failed. The experience of Judge Fred Morris comes to mind. Procedures can be used to delay and frustrate simple and straightforward investigations. The allegation of the whistleblowers needed A small inquiry. It wasn't a murder case. Judge Morris again. Members of the Gardaí against whom any wrong is alleged have the dubious and often exploited benefit of procedures that compare with those in a murder trial. Garda discipline should be about accounting for how one has served the people of Ireland and about the truth. Minister Brendan Howland, disciplinary actions within the Garda Síochána take on the character of a criminal trial with a criminal level of proof required. This is hopelessly inadequate. Despite the repeated evidence the force needs urgent reform, and this goes way back to before Smithwick and Morris, the current commissioner rejects the conclusion. While formally accepting the Smithwick report last month, he explicitly rejected its findings in the Garda groupthink. The police force that is described is not the police force that I lead. Everything we do in the Garda Síochána is designed to establish the truth. Mr. Callaghan rejects the case for reform, and he insists that he is the accounting officer who must alone decide what, if anything, needs reforming. The defenders of this position traditionally put forward the thin blue line defence. Gardaí put their lives in a line, as if that trumps everything. But no Garda ever sacrificed his life to defend the force's right to do wrong. 4 independent TDs brought this matter into the public realm. Ming Flanagan was smeared over his acceptance of a deletion of penalty points. Mick Wallace was smeared by the Minister of Justice with information given over to him by Commissioner Callaghan. Claire Daly was falsely suspected of drunk driving and publicly handcuffed. Her arrest was immediately leaked and was widely smeared in the media before test results proved her innocence. How strenuously has the force sought to identify and charge whoever broke the law in an effort to undermine Miss Daly? That'll be confidential. So there you go. That's a nice summation of the kind of situation, and I genuinely do think it's a disturbing thing that really, really needs to be sorted out. Will it be sorted out? Probably not. The third story, and this is going to be the polls. So polls are featured in 2 papers. And this is kind of what's interesting. We come out in 2 papers. The findings are slightly different, but we're going to go with the Sunday Independent first. The Sunday Independent's poll is by Millward Brown. And they're kind of, and they've obviously looked at support. And their support, they have Fine Gael at 30, Fianna Fáil at 26, Sinn Féin at 16, and Labour at 12, with others at 15, and Greens at 1%. I'm amazed to see Greens at that. Satisfaction with the government is satisfaction with the government is a 68% dissatisfaction rate, 23% satisfied. And if you look at the party leaders, the satisfaction level is really, really dismal. So that's kind of basically it. I mean, I'll go into the Sunday thing because the Sunday Business Post analysis is a bit different, but there's a huge amount of dissatisfaction out there, and there's some really interesting analysis by Fiona Sheehan when I get to Luncinda Creighton next. But I'm going to take the poll from the Sunday Business Post again quickly. Personally, I'm kind of more trying to do the Sunday Business Post poll because I just think the actual result is slightly more interesting. I mentioned the headlines, but they have Fine Gael at 27%, and in second place, the Independents at 25%. So here they have Fine Gael 27%. That's down 2. Labour at 9%. Down 3. Fianna Fáil at 23% plus 1. Sinn Féin at 16%, which is the same as the Sunday Independent having that. And the Independents are up 3 at 25%. I think that is really, really extraordinary. But let's looking inside at the analysis that they have. Is this the right part? No, it's not. This is the right page. Yeah, so bailout exit bounce for coalition is short-lived. So again, this is the bailout bounce. So according to the poll that the Sunday Business posted a few weeks ago, there was a bit of a boost in support for Labour and Fine Gael post-bailout. And it was like, yay, that's over, good. And that's kind of gone away when kind of everyone realized, oh, is that really over, is it? Yeah, I'm not sure really what you can say. It's kind of interesting. I'm not going to read too much into it, but it's interesting to see kind of where they're standing. And anyway, is there anything into? I don't know. Economic recovery is something. There was some analysis about the Luncinda Creighton thing, but actually, I'll just skip this and go straight to the Luncinda Creighton. So yeah, the polls, Fianna Fáil is still top, and blah blah blah, but lots of dissatisfaction. So story number 3 is Luncinda Creighton, the whole Reform Alliance malarkey. There was 1,000 people in the RDS yesterday, and they all wanted reform. Again, with the angle and the it's actually the Sunday Independent. They're kind of they're going with voters tired of waiting for Lucinda's new party, but really their analysis is essentially that people are feeling very, very lukewarm about this new party, which by the way, Luncinda Creighton is insisting isn't actually a party and it's more of a movement, which, you couldn't state more explicitly that this is being set up as a kind of new wave Irish Tea Party. And Creighton, it's amazing. Over the last 4 weeks, I've read, I think, well over 30 to 40 articles about Luncinda Creighton. Not one has mentioned the fact that when she was in her college days, she was a pro-choice campaigner in Trinity. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago. You probably didn't see it, who was actually watching this thing. But I think it's extraordinary. Like, I was reading all this stuff, and I just thought this key, crucial bit of information about kind of, it could frame her as someone who's kind of more ambitious and seeing an opportunity rather than being someone who is sincere in their convictions, or just not sincere in their convictions. It's interesting that that narrative then didn't, I used to be, but I changed my mind, that type of thing. But yeah, like, reading through this thing, I thought it was kind of deluded. I had to look it up again to make sure that, yeah, she was a she wasn't overtly pro-choice, but she was pro the suicide clause and certainly pro X case, which is the issue she left Fine Gael over anyway. Oh yeah, and that was the issue apparently, according to reports, that also got the biggest applause in the RDS yesterday at this big monster meeting. Okay. Looking for the mirror. Yeah, the mirror. And here we go. Lou, we need something different. So the group aims to transform the political... So this is a Reform Alliance. The group aims to transform the political system and economy. Ms. Creighton, the Alliance chief and former Fine Gael European minister, said the conference turnout exceeded all expectations. She insisted the organisation is not looking to become a new political party, but said the gathering was a way to get the message out. Ms. Creighton added, "It's not just something we're focusing on at all. It's a movement." Sorry, my woman. I don't know why my woman's voice is. It's not even Terry. Not Terry Pratchett. Terry Jones. Yeah. Okay, actually, let's dump that. Because I want to go to Fionn Sheehan. Beaker, and Beaker is excellent. I thought he's very good analysis of the Creighton situation because he's kind of, I thought his analysis was really good, and I'm going to read his analysis to you like I am. Okay, a bluer FG is not the answer for many votes. So his, like I said, his analysis is really interesting. And moreover, the problem for the Reform Alliance comes from the contradiction between its origin. So, the basic problem is it's a conservative movement, it's a conservative Tea Party movement, and there's not really much space within the Irish political, the political whatever spectrum for them to kind of occupy. If you look at Political Compass, who did a kind of mapping of the political parties in Ireland, you can see they're pretty much all centre-right. Where the hell are they going to go? But anyway, Fionn Sheehan in the Sunday Independent kind of addresses this. And moreover, the problem for the Reform Alliance comes from the contradiction between its origins in Fine Gael and its support for a new party being higher among Sinn Féin supporters and those in lower social classes. Similarly, support for the Reform Alliance itself becoming a party is strongest in these categories of voters. Opinions on the floor of the RDS morning about the need for an end to clientism. Oh yeah, this is the other thing. They're talking about, it's political reform, it's this or that. They have Fidelma Healy, whatever her name is, in that, and I don't know, Google Fidelma Healy Eames and broadsheet, and you'll see the cut of her jib. Opinion from the floor of the RDS yesterday morning about the need for an end to clientism and political dynasties does not exactly tally with 3 Reform Alliance TDs, Dennis Naughton, Billy Timmins and Terence Flanagan all have their brothers sitting on the council seats they once held on the same local authorities. So yeah, the Reform Alliance basically same old shit, and it's kind of doomed, really, by the sounds of it, because where's the space they're going into? I mean, the only thing the Reform Alliance has going for it, in my opinion, really, is the one weird amount of media coverage it's getting. Now, there was some analysis there comparing the United Left Alliance as a group to the Reform Alliance and saying how much coverage and the quality of the coverage it got. Now, in terms of the volume of coverage, I think there's a bit of a flaw with kind of comparing that to the left, because this is a narrative that's also within the government. It's a fracture within the central leadership party. It's of personalities who have been kind of consistently in the media, and who there's certain awareness of that you wouldn't necessarily have to the same degree amongst the left. So there might be an excuse there. In terms of quality, though, that's a completely different matter. And, it's like, where's the money going to come from, blah, 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 blah. There's much more of a criticism of leftist groups in the Irish newspapers, but, that's not much of a surprise. Okay, Creighton, and now I'm going to move straight on to 5. This is 5. The banking inquiry, because I think the banking inquiry is mega, mega important. This is the one I'm actually finally this is going to happen. Apparently, finally, we're going to have a bloody banking inquiry. Okay, so this is Cliff Taylor in the Sunday Business Post, and he's going on about the banking inquiry and kind of what it needs to look out for. So, while the members of the Dirt Committee did a good job, they were, to an extent, shooting at an open goal. Someone has to set out on the pitch for the banking inquiry. I am still not clear on who this is going to be. There is talk of legal expertise and forensic accounts, but this preliminary work will all take time and expertise. Otherwise, the banker officials and regulators will run rings around the committee. Okay, so that's kind of, all right. So he's got 4 questions, that kind of 4 things the inquiry needs to keep an eye on. So who will do the preliminary work? So that's kind of what I covered there. Someone needs to kind of go out there, set the terrain, build a structure, make sure that this is going to be, there's a structure there and a system there that's going to adequately address something that, deals with kind of a complicated field, a field not many TDs will be expert in, all that kind of jazz. Number 2, kind of focuses efforts. And if the inquiry tries to cover everything, it will end up achieving nothing. We are told that it will only focus on the run-up to the guarantee and the decision itself. Now, I think that's a big mistake. Big mistake. I think that's genuinely, anyway, like, up into the guarantee and there itself, because the guarantee wasn't exactly what buggered us up. The guarantee was rolled over. The decision to do the promissory note, all these, loads and loads of different elements were kind of going on other than that. And the guarantee really kind of does limit it to pillar banks and banks where the staff have been cleared out of or are gone. It's a safe, apolitical kind of banking inquiry. It's kind of people who are not necessarily plugged in anymore. Your David Drums and all this kind of jazz. People who are already cartoon baddies around this kind of image in the Irish media. Maybe deservedly so, but I'm not exactly mad about that anyway. 3, will it waste time chasing conspiracy theories? There are so many theories about who said what to who on the night of the guarantee. This will be a key part of the inquiry, and one where there will be a much more scope for political grandstanding. We do need to know what happened. We need tough questioning, but we also don't need the committee chasing shadows. For my money, the bigger mistakes were made in the run-up to the guarantee than on the night itself. My gut feeling is that there may be more to be learned from this. There is a risk, too, of too much focus on the night itself. 4, will it turn into a political circus? If this inquiry has any credibility, it can't be seen as a device for the government to shaft Fianna Fáil before the May elections, or indeed the general elections due in 2016. Of course, this is what the government parties will want to do, politics being politics. They should avoid temptation. Good point. Because really, if this is to be effective in any way whatsoever, it needs to be a systemic analysis. It needs to be something that will mean this never happens again. Will that happen? Who knows? My understanding is that some communication was indeed. This is about the ECB letter that Lenihan received on November 12th, 2010. Whether it was a letter, whether it was a fax, that's kind of debated. But this is Cliff Taylor again. My understanding is that some communication was indeed received November 12th. Presumably it was not an actual letter, as this was not disclosed by the department on existing. Was it an email or a fax sent to Lenihan's house? In any event, I believe it was a written communication of some sort that caused some shock to Lenihan by its tone and the specific threat related to the continuation of emergency funding by the central bank to Anglo-Irish Bank in particular. This was a special funding line which had to be regularly reapproved by the ECB. The exact terms in which the letter was put are not clear, but it does seem to have caused some shock and surprise on the Irish side. Yeah, we need to know what was in that bloody letter. We need to know what gun was going to put to his head. Okay, and Sunday Times. Again, slightly different angle than the Sunday Times, where there's concerns that certain TDs' bias rule hits bank inquiries. The senior spokesman in the finance for the two main opposition parties could be excluded from banking inquiry because of new rules on bias. Michael McGrath, Fianna Fáil, and Pierce Doherty of Sinn Féin may not be able to serve on the banking inquiry because of previous comments they made about the banking collapse could be interpreted as bias under the terms of the new Oireachtas inquiry legislation. McGrath and Doherty will both resist any attempt to keep them off the inquiry, and the decision will ultimately fall to the Dáil Committee procedural and Dáil Committee procedure privilege, which oversees all parliamentary. It'd be absolutely insane if Pierce Doherty isn't on this. I mean, if you ever followed the blog, excellent blog, Namo Wine, like now really not being updated, although occasionally put the thing up on Twitter. You know, whenever they have the questions being asked of the minister, it is consistently in all their blog posts Pierce Doherty who is putting these questions to the commissioner, to Noonan, trying to get to the bottom of all these kind of various different economic issues, specifically NAMA. And he comes across through these transcripts that they have up there as being someone very thorough and very on the ball, and he's an excellent rhetorician as well, a very, very admirable politician. I think, him on the banking inquiry, I think that would be a disaster. Okay. Right, now, number 6. I want to go to the Sunday Business Post. And I believe David McWilliams on China. Yeah, interesting post with David McWilliams. You know, with David McWilliams, you kind of just have to read the middle. You can't really read the start, because it's just full of this kind of daft parable about something or other. It doesn't really make sense anyway. And you just might as well skip it. But the actual meat of what he writes can often be quite good and interesting. Like here, he's kind of talking about China and the China potential bubble within China and how this is affecting Wall Street, and kind of people are nervous. People are wondering, oh my God, is there something hidden in China? Is there a secret bubble we don't know about that's going to blow up in the world's face? China's huge. Well, obviously China's huge. The fear highlighted in this column a few times in the past is that massive credit easing in China of the past few years has led to a huge bubble in the Chinese banking system. We know from our experience in Ireland that massive credit growth rarely leads to a sustainable period of economic growth, as suggested in textbooks, but in contrast, leads almost inevitably to bubbles, defaults, and bankruptcies. In the past few years, evidence of these bankruptcies have emerged in China. At the moment, the figures are minuscule in the context of the second largest economy in the world, but there is one thing we know about defaults. Like cockroaches in New York, they never come in ones. When you see one, you know you have thousands. No, good point. Let's see, where else? I'll go on here. To all across the world, from Argentina, Turkey, South Africa to Brazil, the currencies of the countries fell sharply on Friday. When you take a bit of attitude, none of this seems to make sense. So he's talking about kind of a Wall Street shock that happened over fears that there is a bubble within China. I I won't get into the details of it, but this I find really interesting. He talks about how the system is kind of interlinked. The answer to this, so he's asking why would a crash or fears about China affect the South African rand? For example, the answer to this legitimate question is leverage. The global financial markets are gelled together by huge borrowing. In the past year, many millions of Japanese yen were borrowed to buy stuff around the world. For example, South African rand. The rand offers high interest rate to investors at 5%. The yen rates are practically zero, so the traders make a borrow in yen and buy in rand. But when panic sets in, they will sell the rand because they want to own the dollars and not be exposed to the risk in places like South Africa. So the rand falls for no real reason other than people are worried about China. And this fear prompts them all to buy dollars and yen and Swiss francs. And yeah, I know. I just thought that was kind of a little interesting snippet into the global economy and kind of the machinations. Even if some people might be a bit rudimentary, I like those things. So that's David McWilliams. Conor McCarthy. I think Conor McCarthy is in. Yeah, I want to. I've a to pick Conor McCarthy. I don't actually read it, but he has an article about the pylons and that, and he repeats a line that Richard Tall, another economist who was. He used to be with that body, big economic think tank in Ireland. Oh, I'll wreck my head. I'll remember it in a second. But he left it over a hoo-ha over a thing of his that was released early, over a paper that was released early regarding unemployment and work and the costs associated with it. They both kind of had essentially similar lines. And Colin McCarthy's piece, the pull quote is, for every ton of carbon emitted from Ireland, 500 emitted worldwide. It's similar kind of from Richard Tull as well a few weeks ago with that. Ireland is too small to make a dent in global warming. Look, that attitude is going to screw up the human race. Alright? You could break down any single unit of a country anywhere, and if people collectively, the human species, everyone doesn't work towards sorting this thing out, we could be headed for an ecological disaster of unprecedented levels. We're already in the middle of, I believe it's the 7th great extinction event. There's bullets coming our way in various different forms. You still have the economy, the debt kind of hangover. We're running out of fossil fuels, we're running out of fuels, there's going to be an energy crisis, plus you have the ecological crisis coming along. And those three together could really, really hamper and damage our ability as a species, as a society, as however you want to define it. So as a capitalist global conglomerate, whatever the hell. The act needs to be done, and you want to be a country pulling your weight, don't you? You want to have some bloody pride. You want to be working towards it, pulling your weight. You don't want to be the lazy country. Oh, we're so small, we don't have to bother doing it. I think that I can't stand that attitude. I think it's a cowardly, weak attitude. So what if we're bloody small? We should bloody well take advantage of the fact that we're a small country and use that, because you can probably instigate infrastructure much quicker. There's certain things you can do within a country that's small that you can't do with a country that's big, And there's different dynamics at work. It might seem like a trivial thing, but the plastic bag thing, the plastic bag tax. I think Ireland was the first country to do that. Smoking ban. Ireland was the first country to do that. Little kind of social things might work very well and effectively in a small country like Ireland, and then can be exported outward. Ireland has a role to play in this thing, and it doesn't matter if we're 1/500 as small as the rest of the world. So what? So are most goddamn countries. Most countries are pretty damn small. They're not all bloody Russia. And we should pull our bloody weight and not be a bunch of lazy, bloody, do-nothing arseholes saying, oh, we're too small to be fucking bothered. Because if everyone's like that, we're fucked. Right. Now, lastly, I'm not quite as sharp as I would like to be for this. I didn't get a full night's sleep, boo-hoo-hoo, but I wanna just go to a nice bit of fun. I need the sun. Oh, that's a star. That's what people. This song. I have to go to this story. I kind of touched it. This is my favorite story. It's Uri Geller. Uri Geller. God, what an absolute charlatan. I mean, this guy must just, as soon as the cameras are away from him, he must just be pissing himself that he gets to look at this crap. And he's pulling this whole, I want to fly in a chopper over the stadium. You know, he's pulling this thing, come on, Uri boys in green. Where he wants to do this thing that apparently he did in Euro 96, where it's just, he's just hilarious. He sold dowsing rods to the Israeli army as bomb equipment. I mean, this guy gets found out all over the gap, but I don't know. You gotta admire this kind of charlatan. Anyone dumb enough to be fooled by this guy deserves to be fooled by this guy. You know, leaving aside people who are mentally vulnerable like Michael Jackson and that type of thing, I suppose. Yeah, this is gas. Some credit, so talking about him and kind of what he did in football, some credit him at moving the ball as Gary McAllister took the penalty for Scotland during a game which apparently helped England keeper David Seaman to save it. Some. Who? Does anyone actually seriously think Uri Geller flying in a fucking helicopter over a fucking Wembley fucking stadium in 1996 telepathically moved the ball that Gary fucking McAllister was about to kick? Does anyone actually fucking think that? Because if they think that, why does Uri Geller even need a helicopter? Why doesn't he fucking fly himself over the fucking stadium and use his brain power to fucking move the ball wherever the hell he could fucking score hat-tricks and all that kind of jazz? And it's just hilarious. The balls of this guy, you know, he's testing us out. He's testing us fucking out to see if we're gonna bite. But if O'Neill doesn't take him up on the offer, Uri believes his assistant Keane might have a more open mind, adding, I'm sure Roy would go for it. Yeah, I'm sure Roy would go for it too. And I think, like I said in the headline review, my God, I'd love to be a fly on the wall at that meeting. Okay, we're going to leave it at that. This has gone on for long enough. Sorry it's late. I don't think anyone's actually waiting on this thing. But if you have watched it, for what it's worth, thank you for your time and your patience. And I'll be doing this next week, next Sunday, for the foreseeable future. That's the analysis. I am going to get better at this as time goes by. Happy Sunday. Yay!
Let the beat control your body. Let the beat control your body. Let the beat control your body. Let the beat control your